And what happens then?
Insula?
Gustation, exactly. So, you know what, this is kind of neat, actually. I never really thought about this way, but we slice this through here, you can see, right, where if you peeled back the temporal lobe right there, like if I could grab that piece and peel it back, there is the insula right there. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at this piece right here. Cool, huh? So we're not quite to the diencephalon, right? Not yet. We're out here in this area right here. Okay, so I like that. I like to ask you what that is, right? What lobe is it, or what is its function? You tell me taste, gustation, right? That's the term I'm going to use. And this actually does come off, but what I want to do is just kind of pull out the whole thing. And so you've got the pituitary, right? I like it for that. I like it, I just used it for this on our last test, right? I really like this blood supply because you can see the vertebral. Do not tell me that this is the carotid. Remember, it's actually in the vertebra, right? And so it's vertebral. Those come together to give us the basilar. So you actually got some basilar right there, which is pretty cool, right? Again, we got the sinuses, right? And the chorionic villi. So remember, do you remember the name of this? The superior sagittal, right? Oh, that's the crevice between these, but the name of the sinus is sagittal. Superior sagittal, because there's actually an inferior sagittal too. Superior sagittal, and this is how the CSF gets from around within the brain, right, and the spinal cord out back into our blood supply. So remember, the CSF travels in the subarachnoid space in between the brain and that sinus. And then these little villi are extensions from that arachnoid lid out into this sinus. And so form simple diffusion, right? Because it's more concentrated in the subarachnoid space, it diffuses out into the sinus. And that's how it gets back out into our bloodstream. And that's why we have to keep making it every day in the ventricles. So the other thing I like about this is not only that you can see the lateral ventricles, right? And do you remember what this is? This is the corpus callosum, right? That's attaching both sides. Pretty cool. You can see back here the apertures or the openings from the fourth ventricle. So this is the fourth ventricle. Remember, third's inside around the diencephalon. We can't see it like this. We have to cut this bad boy in half to see it. But on the fourth, you can see here, right, at these points, sorry, I keep pointing to that. Here are the two medials, and these are the laterals that go out to drain it around the brain and down around the spinal cord. Okay. So you should be able to tell me that's fourth, right? That these are the two laterals. Tell me the name of this again. The insular lobe. Okay, so this is actually a lobe of the brain, right? Of the cerebral hemispheres. We've got frontal. What's this? Parietal. And, yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't forget about this one. There's 5. There's 5, really, right? Okay, so if we're going to take it out, I'm going to keep it together, though, because this thing's a booger to get back together. And not many of you guys have actually taken it apart because it's so hard, but we have this so that I can show you the inside. So I don't really need to do that, right? It's got a great pineal gland back there, though. But we've got the pituitary there. I asked you about the infundibulum on the last test, right? So superior sagittal sinus, remember all these come together in the cavernous sinus, which comes around and becomes the sigmoid, and that dumps into the internal jugular vein, which is in front of this. Because there is there is a vertebral vein also that travels with this vertebral artery. They just never show it to you. It's not on the spine either. They just never put it in there. I don't know why. They don't care about the veins, I guess. And these are supposed to be the spinal nerves, you guys. Okay, so if you look closely, this is another thing that I really like this for. It actually has C1, right? In between the occiput and the atlas. So atlas axis, remember, is C1, C2, and this actually has C1. The spine does not, right? The only other model I have in here that has this is the skeleton. And the real one, he doesn't have these little fake things in him, right? So it's just that skeleton over there. So I like him for that too, right? So I might label a nerve on him, or these arteries, like I already said. Just those big sinuses, they really messed this up inside. They totally screwed up these sinuses, so I'm not going to ask you one of those. No, superior sagittal becomes cavernosum, comes around, and this right here, just like in the, how the colon had, the large intestine had that curve in it that we called sigmoid, this is called sigmoid too. Kind of looks like a S. So it becomes a sigmoid sinus on this curve, and that dumps into the internal jugular, which eventually comes down to subclavians, right, and goes back to the superior vena cava. So I'm not going to take this apart. Don't worry about that. You know what I mean. What is this? These are the optic,
nerves.
Yeah, these are the nerves. There's the chiasm right there, technically where they cross. So if I was just to label one of these, you tell me optic nerve. But if I ask you about the X, and then right behind it are the mammillary bodies. But I'm not going to ask you about the mammillary bodies. It's been too long. I mean, it's been a while, right? And it's just too much. I don't care about that. And I'm not going to use this for cranial nerves because we have these bad boys.
Right.
And this kind of falls apart. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want you to have to manipulate this a lot to answer questions. So I'll put 2 or 3 on here, and then I'll use this guy.